Chamorro culture continues to be preserved through the sharing of language and history at Guam's museum, but the battle to be heard and have a voice as a U.S. territory remains an ongoing struggle. The Chamorro people are the indigenous people of the Mariana Islands, politically divided between Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands and Micronesia. Chamorro cultural historian and Guam's museum curator, Dr. Michael Bavacqua, says Chamorro people in Guam have a complex relationship with the US but consider themselves as Pacific Islanders. Alicia Foon spoke with Dr. Bavacqua about the culture's rich history in the Pacific and its relationship with the US.
After liberation, there was this strong desire amongst Chamorros and these strong kind of pressures to westernize, to Americanize. So Chamorros stopped speaking their language to their children. There was this pressure to move to the States, to leave the island, sell your land. There was also displacement from the military. The military displaced thousands of Chamorro families to build their bases. But there was just this feeling that being Chamorro wasn't worth anything. And so, be American instead, give it up. And so attending the Festival of Pacific Arts, FESPAC, was an important, very fundamental moment where Chamorros saw that other islanders were dealing with and navigating sort of modernity differently. They were navigating the 20th century in a completely different way. Other islanders were kind of picking and choosing more. They were not completely trying to replace. They were not throwing everything away. They were trying to adapt and blend more. And it also, attending FESPAC in the 70s and in the 80s, Chamorros saw that other islanders were proud to be islanders. They weren't trying to pretend they weren't islanders, but they were proud and that it was okay to be from an island. You didn't have to pretend that you were something better than an islander. And so it led to a number of different cultural practitioners, many of whom are cultural masters in our community now, to try to investigate how did our people dance before? How did our people express themselves before? And can we express ourselves through traditional forms of dance again? And this helped lead to the Chamorro Renaissance, which manifested in terms of Chamorros starting to carve jewelry again, try to speak their language again. It led to movements for indigenous rights again, all sorts of stuff. And a lot of it was tied to just seeing other Pacific Islanders and realizing that they're proud to be who they are. We don't have to trade in our indigenous identity for a colonial identity. We can be Chamorro. We can enjoy the comforts of American life and also be Chamorro. Let's celebrate who we are.
How would you recognize that someone is a Chamorro person?
For a Chamorro person today, you might recognize them because they might have certain types of jewelry. So they might have, for example, if they might have a piece of jewelry like I have. It's called a sinahi, made out of giant clamshell. It's in sort of a crescent or new moon shape here. Or they might have what's a spongulus, an orange, circular shaped shell like a sun with a hole in the middle of it. So those are two types of jewelry that are very commonly worn nowadays by Chamorros. Let's say you will definitely know Chamorros if they ask you if you want to eat something, because Chamorros, like other Pacific Islanders, definitely enjoy eating. In terms of values, Chamorros will tell you that, of course, respect is very important. Respecting your elders, reciprocity is key. So there is the act of tsensuli, which means that you have to kind of reciprocate. If somebody helps you one day, then you need to make sure that you reciprocate. And these are relationships which sometimes extend back generations, that families help each other, going back to before World War II, going back, and you always have to keep up with them. And in the past, sometimes people would write them down in little books, and nowadays people keep them in their notes app on their phones. They keep track of their tsensuli. The most important value that everyone likes to talk about nowadays, though, is inafa maulik. And this is tied to tsensuli. This is sort of this larger interdependence. And inafa maulik is sort of the most fundamental principle of Chamorro life, and it could extend between sort of people, but it can also extend as well to sort of your relationship with nature, your relationship to your larger community. Root words for Inafamaulik mean to make things good for each other. And so it is that interdependence, that idea that we are all connected to each other. We have to find a way to work together. We have to find a way to take care of each other. Whether it is about finding a way to sustain a community in terms of surviving a typhoon, tackling issues like a pandemic, climate change. So Inafamaulik is this big value which is all about, which Chamorros invoke, about coming together so that we can make things good for each other. But we're always kind of held back because as a territory, you don't have an international voice. The United States speaks for you. And so you can yell, you can shout, and you can scream, but as a territory, you're not supposed to count. You're not supposed to matter. Somebody speaks for you. And that's why, for me, decolonization is essential. Because if you have particular needs, if you are an island in the Western Pacific and there are challenges that you face that somebody in West Virginia, somebody in Ohio, somebody in Utah, somebody in Arizona and California may not care about in the same way and may be caught up in all different types of politics, you have to have the ability to do something about the challenges that are affecting you. How do you do that if 350 million people 10,000 miles away have your voice and most of them don't even know that they hold your voice? Sucks.